Hello and welcome to episode 154 of The Pitcher or the Hitter, the podcast by the M-SABR Dynasty League for the M-SABR Dynasty League. I am Cam,
I'm Sahil.
and all is right in the world. Kris Bryant is back on my team after about a week or so of a hiatus. It's part of a failed trade, but he is in my eighth and final IL spot currently.
Goodness. Do you just hate your team? Like, I'm confused by this. You won a matchup this week when he wasn't on your team. You were undefeated when Kris Bryant is not a member of your organization.
He's my first ever pick, and I had the open spot. Yeah, that was 10 days with him gone. Yeah, uh he's on my IL. I don't know how long I plan on keeping him here. But I will be putting him back in as a beautiful green square on the old sheet.
That's disgusting. Kris Bryant does not need to be rostered.
Yeah,
Uh,
he's had the open spot.
it's a waste of an ad.
I don't plan on using all of my ads this coming week anyway, but yes, this deal, me and Andrew wanted to make a deal, Anthony Rendon um, for someone. I decided it would be funny if I picked up Kris Bryant and traded him to Andrew. I kind of, yeah, made my cut. I was going to be cutting Gabe Spire because he was a hold streamer who was unsuccessful. I'm going to be, so I cleared up the space a little bit early so I could add Kris Bryant. And yeah, I now have. I was going to trade Kris Bryant for Rendon. Andrew balked at the deal once he realized he would have had to cut someone, uh, at least temporarily, to kind of make this deal work from an IL spots perspective. Um, so we ended up reversing the trade. Anthony Rendon invoked his no trade clause, but I decided to just keep Bryant on the IL as a mascot of sorts.
It's a mascot of sorts. I love it. Yeah, there you have it. Good explanation. Andrew actually made a trade minutes before that, though, and I think that's worth kind of discussing. I don't really know what to make of it, but Andrew traded Emerson Hancock and his 2026 second round pick to EBO for River Ryan and Daniel and Matt's um, 2026 third round pick. I don't think the picks are much of a concern here. I think it's a matter of dropping a couple spots. Um, what I do think is kind of interesting here are the two players involved. Um, River Ryan, someone at EVO, is kind of hyped up a lot because that one Fangraphs list has him as the top 20 prospect, even though literally nowhere else kind of seems to think he's relevant. And then Hancock's kind of been a highly regarded prospect for at different times here. He was one of those top pitchers in that 2021 draft. God, those pitchers are quite a mixed bag. Three of them won in the top seven of our draft. Max Meyer, Asa Lacy, and Hancock. I think Andrew needed to move off Hancock. He was going to lose prospect eligibility. And Andrew can't really afford to deal with him while he's struggling. I also think Hancock's about to lose his rotation job when Brian Wu comes back. Whereas maybe EBO has a little more space to take that gamble, but I don't know. I thought River Ryan might get more just because of the where he ranked on that Fangraphs list. But I mean, neither player really excites me. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree. Yeah, River Ryan, I know Zane is a big Fangraphs list guy. And Fangraphs, I like their list a lot of the time, but it does just seem like they have a tendency to see a 24-year-old or 25-year-old starting pitcher who's about to debut and just kind of hype him way up more so than other lists will. Usually those guys don't really turn into much. Tony Santillan types or Adbert Alzolay types or um, Jose Suarez was one of those guys I remember.
There's a
Um,
reason if you're 25 and you haven't debuted yet.
right. Exactly. But regardless, he was a guy who is highly ranked on a highly regarded list. So it was a little bit surprising to see Zane kind of move off of him so quickly. He has had a rough start of the season. And yeah, I don't really have much more to say. You're right about Hancock being someone that, he hasn't looked particularly great. He certainly hasn't really looked like a rosterable guy so far, and he would have had to make a decision on him soon. And now EBO is going to have to make a decision on him soon, and maybe they can be a little bit more patient.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head. I have nothing else to say about this trade. There were no other trades this week. Pretty quiet week overall on that front. Anything else you'd like to talk about before we dive into the matchups here?
No, let's do it. A quiet week in terms of trades, but I would say a lot of interesting matchups went down this week. A lot to talk about.
Yeah, let's start off with the tie. This was kind of a heartbreaking tie for Anthony, but Anthony and Erik tied. And now Anthony had a couple chances to really put this away. Um, um, so Taiwan Walker went in his first start back, went 6 innings, 3 earned, looking great. And then for some unknown reason, God knows why, the Phillies were like, you know what would be cool? Let's bring you out for the 7th inning. He proceeds to give up a 3-run home run. So Darvish's and kills his whip. That will become relevant here in a second. But Anthony still had a chance to break the tie, and indeed he did. Sunday Night Baseball, Cubs, Red Sox. Chris Martin comes in to get the last out of an inning, and that drops Anthony's whip down above Erik's, and Anthony takes the lead. Chris Martin then comes back the next inning, and what does he do but give up a 3-run home run? And just kills Anthony's whip. And that ended up being that. There are a couple offensive players who could have made an impact in the Sunday night game too, who Anthony and Erik both needed their players to hit a home run to take the lead. Neither did. So they ended up tying. Anthony, I know it's disappointing, but to tie against a quality team like Erik, he's got to be pretty happy. Kind of shades of Jake and Ruthvik last week. If you're Erik, I think you're just relieved. I feel like you kind of got away with one here that you really should not have won. But I'll give a shout out to Erik. He broke the league steals record. He had 18 steals this week, so that was pretty insane. Cam, I'm going to let you kind of break the matchup down a little further here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say on the whole, Erik had a pretty solid week. Yeah, 18 steals, 47 runs. The pitching stats were solid, although not in terms of his bullpen. But yeah, he really, in the end of the day, was lucky to not come away with the loss and not be dropped to 2-3. And yeah, Anthony's team, played pretty well. The 24 doubles is great. He had 6 holds, which is very nice as well. And his team, um, they're really hitting to start the year. Mike Trout hit 2 more homers this week and drove in 3 runs. Also walked 6 times, so that is good. Solid week from O'Neal Cruz, who had been off to a slow start. Solid week from Josh Smith. And looking at the pitching, really strong start from Gavin Stone, although only 2 strikeouts, but he did go 7 innings with just 2 hits and 1 earned. Good start for Brandon Pfaadt on Sunday, following getting paddocked on the 22nd, which I believe would have been Monday. That Taiwan Walker game, really the first high-profile Darvish since we realized that we should be calling it a Nola or a Burley. So the first high-profile Burley or the first high-profile Nola in league history, so that's exciting. I'm going to give matchup MVP, though, to Ryan Jeffers, who had a 516 on base, 2 homers, 2 doubles, scored 5 and drove in 5. Really solid week from him, and he's a guy that Anthony didn't even add until until after the season started. So good for him. Looking at Erik's team, the pitching was really solid. Um, good start from Corbin Burns. Um, good start from Ronaldo Lopez. Great pitching from Fernando Cruz, who I was bummed to realize Erik has owned for a couple weeks. He has just looked fantastic in that Reds bullpen. Chris Sale is looking good. George Kirby made a fantastic start as well. He would have probably been Erik's matchup MVP if I was giving it to someone on Erik's team. Although with a shout out to William Contreras and Jose Ramirez. So a lot of Marcell Ozuna was good too. A lot of good performances on Erik's team. I want to give it to one of Anthony's guys though, so Jeffers it is.
Yeah, good call. Jeffers has been great as a Sean Murphy replacement. I think Murphy's on the way back too, so hopefully, maybe Anthony can go with the two catcher setup here.
Yeah, he
As
might.
a lot of teams have kind of been doing recently. It's been interesting, but yeah, I got nothing else to say about that matchup. Ready to move on to the next one.
Let's move on. Let's move on to the least close matchup of them all because it was just kind of shocking. I uh, into this week said that I would be shocked if EBO and Ruthvik did not tie, and boy, did they not tie.
Now, EVO crushed Ruthvik 10-1-1. Um, Great week offensively for EVO in every category but OBP. It was the only one they lost at a 313 OBP. Kind of very efficient when with the kind of hits that their guys got. The pitching side, though, I mean, just 8 quality starts out of 9, 7 saves, 2 holds, a 2.20 ERA, and a 109 WHIP. And for a while there, it looked like they were going to break the ERA and WHIP record. They had like a 0 ERA through like the first 3.5 days, and then they kind of ruined that. But just a dominant performance here all around. As for Ruthvik, okay week. 7 saves was nice, but no other real standout categories. They were lucky they did not get shut out 12-0 as it looked like it was going to be for most of the week. But the time saves helped, and some late OBP kind of swapping on the Sunday night game um, certainly helped as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, Ruthvik just not a particularly great week overall for him. Um, although he did get a great start from Logan Webb, but Joe Musgrove got blown up, Aaron Savali got blown up, Jose Butto was not that great. I mean, starting guys like Tobias Myers. Where does he? I don't get how Ruthvik is. He's got a million like decent starting pitchers, but he's also streaming guys like Tobias Myers. I don't know how that ends up happening. Um,
I don't get it either. It's a mystery. I think Ruthvik's hoping to find kind of the next big thing. Um, but I don't know, man.
yeah, I mean, I get trying to find the next big thing, but like in your lineup and I guess it's late in the week, he knew he was going to lose, so maybe why not waste the ad? But Tobias Myers, I'm pretty confident in saying he is not the next big thing. EBO just had a great week, though. Mark Canna has been really good for them. Kyle Tucker had another solid week. Uh, Another good week for CJ Abrams, who stole a base. They got 10 steals, three of which were from Bryce Terang, which is fun. The pitching really shined, though, like you said. I was between Carlos Rodon and Tarek Skubal for their matchup MVP. Both allowed just one earned run in 13 innings. Rodon allowed fewer base runners, but I am going to give it to Skubal on the back of having three more strikeouts.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm sure AVL would prefer Scuba winning that award anyway.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was, uh, fun fact, I believe the first ever EBO player to win matchup MVP. All the way back in week 5 of 2022. He was their matchup MVP, and he hasn't had one again until now. So good for them and a great week for EBO. Just a real statement win here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I asked you the question off air, and I think it's worth kind of debating here is uh EVO, we had them ranked seventh, we had Ruthvik ranked sixth in our preseason power rankings. Should those be flipped now?
I mean, it'd be hard to argue against the results.
I think so too. Yeah, I think I would have EVO number two. Or not number two, sorry. I would have EVO number six. I don't know where I got two from. And I'd have Ruthvik seven. So I think Ruthvik has some work to do. I have no doubt that he will put in the effort to do so. But
Yeah.
yeah. Um, Anything else you like to say about this matchup? Or are you ready to move on to the next one?
No, let's move on. Which one are you thinking next?
Why don't we jump to my matchup versus Andrew? There's another matchup between two playoff teams here. I ended up winning 8-3-1. Andrew kind of had a big lead early in the week. His offense kind of went off early. He really went off with the bullpen stats, 6 saves and 9 holds, one short of his record. Um, but I slowly kind of chipped away at the lead throughout the week and had a better offensive day today, which was able to secure me the 8-3-1 win. Um, this is now Andrew's last three losses in this league have now all been to me. Once in 2023, towards the end of the regular season, and I 12-0'd him. And then I beat him in the playoffs in the semis. I believe it was also an 8-3-1 win. And then I beat him here today. But good performance by Andrew, but we do hand him, I did hand him his first loss here. Really kind of great performance, but man, if he would have won, all of a sudden he's a game and a half above Anthony, which is functionally 2 games at the tiebreaker and more than 2 games ahead of everybody else. Is the only undefeated team. Like, man, that would have set him up really nicely. As it stands, he drops to 4-1. He's a half game behind me and Jake and or a half game ahead of me and Jake and Anthony now.
Right. Yeah, he is still in first, but definitely would have been a massive win for this team if he had been able to pull it off, and he really nearly was. Had some great performances from Nolan Gorman with 381 on base. Will Smith had a good week. Um, Ryan O'Hearn went 4 for 8 when he was in his lineup. Um, yeah, the pitching did kind of let him down though. Not Ranger Suarez because he was great, but like Colin Poche blew it in the bullpen, and Grayson Rodriguez had a rough start, as did Chris Bassett, um, which those could have really changed his fortunes. Um, Good week on the hitting side overall, though. And you had a really solid, if not spectacular week. The RBI total was pretty low, and the home runs weren't the best, but overall, you pitched pretty well, and hit decently. Also, no real standout bats, although Adley had a good week, as did Altuve. Matchup MVP, and it's not an easy choice to make, but I will give it to Max Fried, who pitched to Maddox this week. Only 6 Ks, but really, really solid start.
Yeah, when you pitch a Maddox, you certainly deserve matchup MVP. Well done. Yeah, a weird offensive week where I only had none of my batters have more than 6 RBIs. So yeah, kind of hard to pick one of them. A lot of like solid OBP weeks, but didn't really do much kind of production wise. So yeah, I will certainly take that. And I will say too, got some pleasant news this week that Kyle Bradish's next start's going to be in Baltimore. It looks like Braxton Garrett's next start might be in Miami. So getting close to a full rotation here. Only notable piece I'll really be missing is Garrett Cole. So, and I guess Gavin Williams as well. But um, it's things are starting to be a little more fun over here at Mount Rushmore Land. So I will certainly take that.
Yeah, no, you're 3-1-1. Definitely a much needed win for your team to avoid dropping to 500 Yeah. Anything else you want to say about your team before we move on, though?
Uh, no, I think I'm good.
Yeah, let's talk about Conor winning his first game of the season, improving to 1-4 with a 9-1 win over Yuki. Yuki kind of will do this, and I almost predicted this in the matchup pick him. He'll uh, have have a great week and play close and nearly beat a couple top teams, and then just kind of throw up a stinker against a not so great team, and that's kind of what happened. But Conor was able to take advantage and pulled out the win.
Yeah, Connor quietly had like a really good week. And I think that obviously kind of Yuki, choked what could have been a really good opportunity here. But like Connor had 50 RBIs and 13 homers. Uh, he had a 3.20 ERA, 131 whip, 5 holds. Um, and those pitching numbers could have been better, but he didn't set his lineup today. There was a couple guys left on his bench, including Jared Jones, but um, um, and Andrew Abbott, which I believe would have flipped strikeouts in his favor, which actually would have made this look worse for Yuki. But yeah, big win for Connor. I'm really curious, and I'm sure you'll break it down here. Just what players he had that went off that like allowed this to happen, because it's just seems really weird to me.
Yeah, so the White Sox had a good week, so Connor therefore had a good week. Um, Great week for Eloy. Couple of homers, 6 runs, 419 on base.
Well,
Uh,
and they swept the Rays, which means it's a
yeah,
bad week for Yuki.
yeah, another bad week for Yuki in that way. Good week for Alex Verdugo, not a White Sox, um, but still put together a good on base, a couple of homers. I think I'm gonna give it to Benintendi though, who drove in 10 of Connor's 50 runs. I only scored twice, but driving in 10 runs in a week, hitting a couple homers. I had a double to go with it as well. Great week from a surprising source for Connor in Andrew Benintendi.
Wrote in 10 runs.
Drove in 10 runs.
Jesus, that's nuts. Um, and good for him kind of living up to that contract for once.
Yeah, for one
Like
week at
that's
least.
for 1 week. Jesus Christ. Uh, it was a deal I liked at the time, I'll have to say, but it's still funny to me that the highest free agent contract that the White Sox have given out in their history is to Andrew Benintendi.
Brutal. Yeah, he has mostly not been that great. Although this yeah, raises his season on base percentage to 224. So good for him.
He only has a 224 OBP now.
It is now 224 after it being 364 this week.
Jesus Christ, that's so bad. That's like speaking of White Sox, because we're talking about Connor. Jose Abreu went into Saturday's game with 1 RBI on the season, and he had two in that game. So he went from one to 3 RBIs. Like
Mhm.
just nuts. How some of these White Sox slash former White Sox have just like completely fell off the map. Um, and that looked like a fun young core there for a while. Like,
Yeah,
uh,
no, they fell apart very quickly.
there's an alternate universe where like the Orioles core just all fell apart like that, and that's what happened to them. Like, uh, not all of these rebuilds work out perfectly. Not all of these young touted players that come up as top prospects actually pan out, or sometimes they do pan out, but not really like what you want them to be. Man, cautionary tale those White Sox are,
Yeah,
but.
speaking of top prospects not who are struggling, are you worried about Corbin Carroll? Because he has been really bad for Yuki's team.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up. I am very concerned about, I mean, they've dropped him in a lineup. He's batting eighth against a right-hander, like below the likes of like Jake McCarthy and Blaze Alexander. Like, he should not be doing that. If you look at his splits pre and post that like gruesome shoulder injury he had last year, like it's just clear he's not the same player. He can't hit for power. He can't, it's not working. And I know like Tatis kind of played through a similar injury and did not really have any issues playing through it. But I think he needs to land on the IL and get that shoulder right. And I only think he's making it worse for himself. And I get why the Diamondbacks, want him in the lineup if he can play, right? But I don't think he's doing anybody any favors right now the way he's playing. So it, thankfully, I don't think it's like a skills issue. I literally just think he needs to get himself healthy. But the problem is are they going to actually sit him down to get healthy, or is he going to have the shoulder surgery that he needs? Like Tatis is kind of a unicorn in that regard, and even he eventually, I think, got the surgery when he was suspended. So, um, they invested a lot of money in Carroll. I think now's the time to sit him.
Yeah, no, I think they really do. He is one for his last 25 currently. He is slugging 245 on the year. Um, and Yuki's lineup as a whole just really struggled this week. Carroll especially.
Yeah, he's got a few guys who've been slumping on the year, and it's certainly not helped. But um, for his sake, I hope some of these guys pick it up soon. And I hope Carroll gets right. I mean, he's one of the electric young players in the game. We know what the upside is. I still think he's a perfectly elite dynasty asset, but it might take a little bit of time to see that again.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yes, let's move on now. Two matchups left. Do we want to talk about Jake versus the Drury?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Jake wins 8-4. He had a 302 OBP, but kind of like the week that EBO had, kind of an efficient offensive week in terms of the guys that did get hits, like were able to drive in, runs and, 14 homers, 19 doubles, like solid there. He had five quality starts, out of what looks like nine, so pretty decent ratio. He had five saves, three holds. 127 whip was pretty pedestrian, 364 ERA is all right. He did lose strikeouts with 60. But playing Daniel and Matt, that was more than enough to pull out the victory there. But this looks like a different Jake team than last year. Well, but let's get into that in a minute. Why don't you kind of break down this matchup a little more?
Yeah, I agree. I do not think Jake had the best week. I mean, looking at the matchup, I really wish I could have played him this week. I would have um yeah, I would have beaten him pretty handily. Yeah, the hitting just was not there. Tough weeks from a lot of his guys. Um Pitching a little better, but not as good as the Drury. Either way. He had, I guess, on the hitting side, some of the better performances were for Michael Harris, who's having a hot start to the season. Um, Edward Julian homered three times, drove in seven, scored seven. It's a good week for him. On the pitching side, not a lot to love, although Kevin Gosman, I believe you mentioned it off air, but he is getting finally back into it. He's made three good starts in a row, including two beautiful quality starts this week. He's got to be matchup MVP. Um, with a nod to, I suppose, three saves from Mason Miller and quality start from Evaldi, and for the good week that Julian had. Um, but yeah, this pitching, he is got to be happy that Gosman is looking good again, because the rest of these guys are not so much.
Yeah, and that's where I'm starting to get concerned here, right? It's Castillo, it's Gosman, who I still think is not totally back, but I think he's still getting there. I think I'd like to see the strikeout numbers kind of get back up again. Cutter Crawford's been solid, not his best start this week, but notable to me in the sense that he was able to go 6 innings. He's thrown six starts now, but only two of them has he gone 6 innings in them, despite that 135 ERA. And I do think just in general, he's due for a little bit of regression, just if you kind of look at like the strikeout to walk ratio and some of the other metrics here. Um, Nathan Eovaldi has 11 walks in his last two starts, and we know he's kind of dealt with some injuries in the past as well. And then like the trio of Ryan Weathers, Jose Soriano, and Albert Suarez didn't exactly have the most inspiring week. Um, it, it's weird because for a while when we would talk about Jake's team, it'd be like, hey, he's just going to hit you a quantity. Like it's going to be like 100 strikeouts with some pretty solid starting pitchers, a lot of depth in that bullpen as well. And it's just not his team right now. Um, and I don't really know what to make of it, right? Like he's still winning, right? He's 3-1-1. He's 2-0 against the Drury. But he's 1-1-1 against everybody else. And it's not looking particularly impressive. And I mean, again, we've talked about the importance of having depth. I'm a little worried some of that depth's not there, but I posed a question to you off air. Maybe it's too early to be having this conversation. We're only 5 weeks in, but he has had some big player losses since then. If we did the power rankings today, would you still have him as your number one team?
Yeah, I wouldn't really find it easy to say one way or the other. He is 3-1-1. It's wild that he's played the Drury twice already in 5 weeks. Um, but he is 3-1-1. I'm not the most confident looking at how his team is played, but I also, you know, am not worried about him finding a way to turn it around by the end of the year either way.
I agree. Like I think he's going to turn it around. I do think he has his work cut out for him a little bit in terms of that pitching staff, and I think he needs to find some solutions quickly because it's clear that the guys that he has are not working out. Um, and even some of the guys who are working out, like he definitely needs some insurance behind them.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, that's my take on Jake there. Yeah, big matchup for him next week against me, and I think that's going to kind of determine a lot for both of our teams.
It really
Early,
is. Yeah. Yeah, a
yeah,
lot. We'll talk about that because that is going to be definitely a matchup to watch.
yeah. But one more matchup to discuss.
Yeah, lastly, last thing on this matchup, the Drury of your peers no longer rostering Brandon Drury. It's a sad day.
Yeah, curious if they rename their team or what happens there. I know I was the one who traded them Brandon Drury in the first place, and I want to see if I can pull up the trade. I had picked up Drury and had owned him for like less than a week, I think, and then shipped him off to them. As you, I'm sure, am rolling your eyes.
Yeah.
Uh, but let's see if I can find it. I can't just search up Drury because that's right. Brandon Drury, Ken Waldichuk, and Logan O'Hoppe for Chris Bassett.
Not the worst deal.
No, they got their starting catcher out of it, so
Yeah.
and I got a decent starter, so I will take
Mm,
that.
a little bit. Yeah, I suggested Jury with an I at the end of your peers because they picked up Jerkson Profar to replace Brandon Drury. Um,
I still
Jerkson
cannot
Profar
believe he's
off to a
relevant.
great start.
Yeah, I don't get it. If he how is he only 31 when he's been in the league now for like 12 years? I got he debuted super young, but it's nuts.
Yeah.
I still remember his days as a top Rangers prospect that everybody thought was going to be the next big thing.
He never became the next big thing, but he's put together some decent years. I think he's had a nice career, and it's always a pleasure seeing his name on my screen.
Well said. Well said. Yeah,
All right.
maybe the juries will cut him, and then you can pick him up as your Kris Bryant replacement.
Maybe, but only if he gets hurt.
Christ.
All right, but speaking of my team, always You had a good week when your matchup's the last one. I beat Alex 8-4. It was mostly comfortable the whole week, although I did get some. He definitely didn't make it the most easy. Had a fantastic pitching week from the elders. Yeah, Brady Singer struck out 11 guys. Logan Gilbert was absolutely a stud this week. Landon Knack um, had a good start. Bryce Elder, not the best start. And Emmanuel Clase, of course, has been dealing. It's a good week, fantastic week on the pitching side for this team. I won by one quality start, one save, and one hold. So if those three categories were flipped, I would have lost this week. As for me, like I mentioned last week, I'm alternating good hitting weeks and good pitching weeks. I haven't really been able to put it all together. Um, my pitching was kind of average. The ERA was high, but the other stats were decent. But my hitters really turned it on in a big way this week. Um, I mean, 26 doubles, one shy of my record. Um, uh, Anthony Rizzo is turning it on finally. Francisco Lindor is kind of finally starting to get hot. Wilson Contreras, another good week. Aaron Judge is starting to get hot. So it feels like a lot of guys are starting to get hot at a good time here. Matchup MVP though, for the second week in a row is Alec Boehm, and this week is even more obvious than last week. He hit 8 doubles this week, which I think is the most
Eight?
I've.
Are you serious?
Alec Boehm hit 8 doubles.
No, holy fuck.
I
I mean,
don't,
how,
I don't, yeah, know if I've ever seen an 8 double guy. He scored 6 runs, drove in 8 runs, had a 581 on base. Um, he is now currently in the player rater, the 10th best player at any position, and number 3 third baseman, uh, third base eligible player that is, and the number 2 primary third baseman, um, number 1 first base eligible player also, which is kind of wild. So yeah, Alec Boehm. This is the year of Boehm, and I'm just loving it.
maybe the April of Dome? I don't really have any feeling that he's going to keep it up at this pace, but
Well, maybe not at this pace, but I've also got, another third baseman now. Max Muncy had a great first full week on my team, as well. And yeah, not a whole lot to say about my matchup other than I'm feeling like my bats are starting to wake up.
I have to say, so I earlier today I chatted you because Sonny Gray's also been great, two great starts since you traded him to me, and I was like, well, wait, we talked about Victor Scott for Louis Varland being this year's Tanner Bibby for or Bybee for Spencer Steer. I was like, is Muncy for Gray this year's Bybee for Steer, but for players that are a decade older.
Yeah, I mean it really has worked out pretty well for both of us. Um yeah, Sonny Gray is killing it to start this year, and Max Muncy is as well.
Yeah. I don't think either of us are complaining about that trade at the moment, but I believe that is it for our matchups, unless you have anything else to say about yours.
No, that is everything. Matchup to watch, we teased. Um, it's got to be you versus Jake. The um, yeah, rematch of last year's finals.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to be, I don't think there's much else you have to say about that. It's going to be a very competitive matchup, very stressful matchup. Obviously, I lost to Jake in the finals. I swept him in the regular season last year. Um, it's uh, it's going to be interesting. It's also the first regular season matchup that he and I will have in a while that is actually a normal 7-day week. Both regular season matchups last year came in long weeks. So looking forward to having a more normal week schedule wise against him.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do want to just give a shout out to Erik versus Andrew as a very interesting matchup this week. Kind of a big litmus test for both of these teams, also.
Yeah, I mean, if Erik falls to 2-3-1 after 6 games with no wins against last year's playoff teams, he'd be 0-3-1 against last year's playoff teams if he loses. Like that would be, man, that'd be tough. Meanwhile, Andrew, right, if he can stick up at 5-1, be there with the big boys at the end, that would be really huge for him. Although, if he drops to 4-2, he'd kind of be right back in the pack after it looked like he could really pull it away. So,
Yeah, absolutely. We're ready to pick them.
yeah, let's pick them. But before we pick them, let's go over last week's uh pick 'em results. It was a pretty interesting pick 'em week for us. Let's see, let's scroll to it. I picked EBO to win. You picked them to tie. Um, I picked myself to win. I was correct about that. You picked Andrew to win. F you, you were wrong. Um, we both picked Jake to win. We both picked you to win. We both picked Erik to win. We were right there. We both picked Yuki to win. That did not pan out quite as we had hoped. And actually, I said we picked Erik to win, and we were right about that. Erik tied with Anthony, so oops. We were kind of right about that in a way. So I went 3-1-2. You went 2-2-2. That puts me at 16-7-7, and that puts you at 16-8-6. I think means I'm ahead of you in the pick'em for the first time in a long time.
Well, all right. So you're picking first.
Yeah. I don't know if I like this. All right. Let me type in next week's matchups on our sheet quickly here. All right. As I'm doing that, I think you will beat the Drury. I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think Ruthvik's going to beat Yuki. I don't think that's going to be much of a problem for him. I think EVO is going to beat Conor. Don't think he'll have much of an issue there. I think Anthony's gonna. This one's a little tough, but Anthony's just kind of on a roll right now, and I'm gonna pick him to be on a roll. Even though I do think what Alex and Zach have been doing on the pitching side is really positive. Um, Andrew versus Erik. Let's see. Man, Andrew has Grayson Rodriguez, Nickel Dolo, and Bailey Falter, who are going to get 2 start weeks. He probably will cut Bailey Falter, but meanwhile, Erik, uh, let's see if these guys actually get 2 starts or if they're just going to start on Monday. Uh, it's not really looking like Erik's lining up for a lot of 2 start weeks. I think Andrew's going to bounce back here. Um, he's just been out playing really well, and yeah, I have a hard time picking against him. I think I'm going to beat Jake. I know I've been pessimistic picking myself against him in the past. Um, but I think my team's just playing really well right now. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm finally gonna have a 12 start week where I don't have to stream to get to 12 starts. And I think I can kind of have some more quality on the pitching side, which is gonna help. Um, yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Let's uh get these picks for myself also. It's tough to pick some of these. I will pick myself to beat Daniel and Matt. I'll pick EBO to beat Connor. I will I think Ruthvik will bounce back, although Yuki really does love playing right to the level of his competition no matter what. Um
One of these weeks I'm gonna pick him. It's so hard.
You know what? I'm gonna pick Yuki. You know what? Let's do it.
Wow, okay.
Let's
Okay.
let's do it. This is the week he does it. He always plays right to the level of his competition. I think he's due for bounce back this week. He always does. I think Anthony will beat Alex and Zach. I am going to pick Erik to win because he's playing really well. He's just not, you know, uh getting the win column, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was first in the roto this year. If we calculated it.
Yeah, you know what? That's fair. And I guess I didn't think about how well he played against me last week and just kind of took a tough loss. Um, yeah, I think you might be right about that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I do not do roto as often in baseball as I do in hockey. But as for you versus Jake, I think I'm gonna pick you for all the same reasons that you gave.
Yeah. I yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. I hope so at least. But this is
I
interesting.
my
We have
reasoning was I am going to give the same reasons that you gave, and then you said that I hit the nail on the head
yeah, yeah,
for saying that you did a good job reasoning.
it- yeah, that's the logic sound.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, anything else here before we wish everyone a happy week 6?
No. We're about to hit the end of the first month of the baseball season here, so that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Uh, going to turn into May here, kind of see how, some of these early trends now, not dealing with as small sample sizes. So, kind of interesting to see how things go from here.
Yeah, absolutely. But with that, yeah, thank you everyone for listening. We will be back next week with episode 155 and our week 6 recap. But see you then.
Yep, see you then.
Welcome back. Your dreams were your ticket out. Welcome back to that same old place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Who'd have thought they'd lead ya? Back here where we need ya. Back here where we need ya.
This podcast is good.